Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Absolutely thrilled to be here as always, and thank you all for joining me. I am joined by the big branch himself, Mr. Sheldon Thomas is here, and we have a very special guest tonight, of course, from Yowie Central and Australian Yowie Research. Miss Sarah Bignell is joining us as well, so we got a bunch to go through. But before we go any further, just let me take a quick moment and thank our sponsor. And of course, I'm speaking of Cryptid Coin, ladies and gentlemen, a new cryptocurrency that has its heart in cryptid research and investigation. If you're looking for a possible cryptocurrency investment, then maybe this is the one. You can find out more about Cryptid Coin by going to cryptidcoin.io. Again, that's cryptidcoin.io. It's available on PancakeSwap. And I got to remember to breathe. And hope you guys check it out. So a special thank you to Cryptid Coin for sponsoring the Paranormal Portal. And I guess it's time to get to it here. So unfortunately, I'm going to use the same screen. So I got to close this stuff down and welcome Sarah Bignell, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing, Sarah?
I'm great. It's so good to talk to you. It's been quite a long time since we chatted, and it's really nice to be back.
It's great to have you back, and thank you so much. Hey, Sheldon, could you shift a little bit to your right, your left?
No, yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Yeah, because you're kind of the way I've got the screens divided. You're kind of like half your face was on screen. So, and by God, we needed to see all your face. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Sarah, it's been a long time since you've been here. We had a fantastic time last time when you were on, and I'm sorry it took so long, but I'm really thrilled that this worked out because it was just a fascinating discussion we had last time regarding the amazing phenomenon that's going on down in Australia. But how's it been since last time we talked?
Well, it's kind of crazy at the moment. We've, as I was just telling you just before the show, I've got so many interviews lined up. We're getting interviews for Yowie hunters, for Australian Yowie Research, and for Yowie Central for my show. There seems to be an uptick in the last, I don't really know how long, but it just seems to be getting more and more reports flowing in, and not just of Yowie, which is the Australian, one of the Aboriginal names for our version of Bigfoot, Sasquatch.
Right.
But there are reports coming in of all sorts of cryptid creatures, of the veil is thinning, apparently, according to some people who are a lot wiser and know a bit more about this stuff than me. Mm-hmm. And we're getting reports of invisible beings, we're getting cryptid creatures, we're getting Yowies, we're getting ghosts, we're getting UFOs and aliens, and everything's all going on at once. So it's pretty crazy, but hectic, but fun, interesting.
I think.
How have you been?
I've been good, and you know, I have to agree with you. I think there is more of this stuff happening. I mean, there's a combination, I suppose, that's probably now more than ever people are feeling better about talking about it because there are shows like yours and ours and many others that give people a forum to have this conversation with, most of the time, like-minded people. So it helps a bunch that people know that there are places to share this kind of stuff. But I really do think there's just more of the activity happening, and it's been kind of, to me, it's an exciting thing because I agree with you. I think there's some kind of weird transition going on, and it's probably, well, for me personally, it just hit me like I was telling you before the show started, but it hit me like a hammer in 2017. And if you went back and watched the Paranormal Portal, you could almost get it to the date, because that night I was just like, something's going on. I don't know what it is, but all I can tell you is this time is really important. But I think that this is kind of a part of it, is that maybe if our frequency is going up, or if there's a more intense frequency surrounding us because of the heightened energy or whatever, maybe more of the stuff is coming through. And certainly the spiritual and the UFO reports are coming, Ian more often for a number of shows, and the cryptids. There's like cryptids crawling out of every corner anymore. It's pretty intense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
From goat man to dog man to invisible beings to little people to it's just seems to be going crazy at the moment. So I've been lucky because I talked to so many interesting people, and lots of people who know way more about this stuff than I do. So it's really nice to be in this position where I'm noticing all of this going on, but I'm also able to reach out to people who know stuff and can sort of give me some ideas about what is going on.
Right. Oh, I absolutely. And I gotta ask you, because one of the things I wanted to make sure to ask you when you're on the show is, and this is a question that comes up a lot whenever we discuss Australia. And of course, many people were aware of the incredible wildfires and such that swept your country, what is it, a year and a half ago or 2 years ago? But it really devastated a lot of the wildlands over there. And people always ask, what happened? Were the Yowies affected? So have you seen any kind of dip or any change in the reporting coming in? Are they displaced now, or do they seem to be doing just fine, or what's the story on that?
Well, we're still getting reports in, reports from this year, so they're still around. It's hard to judge that because the reports that we get in go back, like people might be reporting something now, but it happened 10 years ago.
Sure.
Or it happened 2 years ago, or it happened 20 years ago, or it happened yesterday. So it's kind of hard to judge that, whether the impact of those fires that we had, particularly 2019 to 2020 over that New Year's Eve. I was even stuck in a fire that was awful, even worse than the Black Saturday fires of 2009, and they were bad. So to be honest, I haven't noticed an impact because of the piecemeal way that reports come in, but it wouldn't surprise me if they've moved to other areas, because there was vast tracts of mountainous regions devastated, burnt to a crisp, to the point where there's no life left, no animals left, no insects left, no reptiles left. The trees do start to regrow eventually, but it's got to have had an impact.
Sure,
it's got to have. But there is that that creeps in now where people say that they are interdimensional beings.
Sure.
So are they always here? Can they escape to another dimension where there's not bushfires happening? I don't know the answers to that, but they're questions I ask myself.
Right. Yeah, that does come up. It comes up quite a bit where people, there seems to be a growing number of people that are starting to at least embrace the possibility of that. Whereas, even years ago, it'd be like, oh, come on now, don't go there. And I have to admit, I was one of those people, because it's hard to wrap your head around. What does that mean? I mean, something's like stepping in and out of this world. It sounds like science fiction, but more and more people seem to be embracing that possibility, because I think more and more claims or reports are coming in that have to do with those things. The abilities that are described by the people who contact us and make reports to Australian Yowie Research are so unusual and so difficult to explain in a rational, logical, scientific way that has led me to
really consider the possibility that they are interdimensionally traveling. And it's taken, I'm like you, I didn't think that initially. When I first started this research, I thought we were looking for the missing link, a primitive ape, like, half man, half ape, but that certainly had nothing what we would consider supernatural about it. But, I had a report, one of many, but one particular report I remember distinctly because it blew my mind, was that a guy is out at night hunting at night by himself, bow hunting, so really quiet, wasn't even wearing shoes, like he was making very little noise. And there was enough moonlight to see. He comes across a baby yowie sitting on the ground, cute, and he said it.
Oh, are we breaking up? Uh-oh. Got a little bit of a delay here, but just hang on. I'm sure Sarah will be back with us in a second.
Uh-oh.
It's the glory of our interwebs. Are you there, Sarah?
Are you still there?
Yeah, we're here now. It's just you kind of froze up, but you said there's a baby yowie and then kind of froze, so I don't know where we
think I might have lost you, fellas.
Oh, no.
Internet connection.
Oh, no.
Well, we can hear you. So hopefully this gets sorted out, and maybe I don't know, we'll see. If it doesn't get sorted out, I'll give her a call right back, or maybe she can rejoin. That might be possible. But yeah, I think she's right about that there's, there's a possibility that there is something extra dimensional about these things, but it's hard to know. Let's see what goes on here. Looks like she did lose us.
I see her moving.
You do?
Yeah.
She's frozen on my screen.
Oh, now she's frozen on my screen.
Oh.
She was moving for a second. Okay.
Oh, are you watching the feed or are you watching the Skype?
I'm watching the actual Skype.
Okay. Yeah, because that's probably the best place. But looks like she dropped out.
Okay.
But she
might be rejoining. Yeah.
She'll be able to rejoin, I'm sure. So, unfortunately, that's the pains of the internets.
But that's actually kind of where I'm at with Dogman right now. Is I feel like it might be more of a spiritual type of experience than maybe physical. But I mean, I don't know, of course.
Oh, welcome back.
Aha.
Hey, I don't know what happened then. The joys of technology.
Yeah.
The fact that you're in the United States and I'm in Australia and we're still able to have a live conversation is pretty cool anyway, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. So the story you kind of left off with, this baby yowie was sitting in this place. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, so there's this cute little baby yowie, and this overwhelming feeling not to look at this baby yowie and to move away from it. He turns around, just in front of him, a couple of meters away, squatting on the ground, but still enormous, is a huge, fully grown yowie, maybe the parent.
Oh no!
And as he walked, he felt like he was on autopilot and felt compelled to keep walking. As he looked at this being, it faded out from one shoulder to the next, and he ended up walking through where it was.
Oh my God!
So, yes, yeah. So, how do you explain that? How do you explain beings that people see the outline of them? Mm-hmm. Somebody interviewed recently saw the outline. He was driving along the road. It was at night time. His headlights pick up the outline of a humanoid figure, a tall humanoid figure, translucent, but it was see-through, like there was nothing there. And as he drove past, it wasn't there, but he definitely picked it up in his headlights. So yeah, abilities like that have made me start to think there's something more to this. And then I speak to spiritual people, people who I speak to, people who know a lot about this stuff, and shamans and spiritual healers and people who are part of that invisible world. And they all very matter of fact talk about this interdimensional beings and how people can beings like that have the ability to do that. So I'm leaning towards that now.
Sure. I mean, and it's a possibility. It's just it's tough with my westernized thinking to understand what that means, and how can that be, because just classically either something exists reality-wise, or it doesn't. And it's hard to imagine something that's more in a state of flux between, quote-unquote existing and kind of then quote-unquote not existing, at least in its, or able to change that form in such a manner as it doesn't appear to be there. It's hard to understand that. And I guess maybe that reinforces the whole idea that there's a lot we just don't understand,
Yeah.
I think that's exactly right. I think it would be the height of arrogance to assume that we know everything and that something is completely impossible simply because we don't understand how it could work. I think if somebody in today, somebody was living 200 years ago and looked at the technology that we're using to talk to each other right now, they would think that was magic.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, witchcraft, Sheldon. So I'm not too fussed about the idea that these are ideas. Some people go, "Oh, that's ridiculous. That's science fiction, and it's woo-woo, and you're giving us all a bad name by entertaining those ideas, and it doesn't do our cause any good." And I'm thinking, well, but you're discounting. You're discounting information that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's not actually happening.
Right.
And I try and keep as open a mind as I possibly can. And that's leading me down some very interesting paths and rabbit holes.
Yeah, I think you're right, though, because I guess what I always remind myself is, look, we have topics of discussion in science that are emerging, like quantum mechanics and stuff, and we just barely understand quantum mechanics. But the whole idea, like quantum entanglement, if you took an atom of one part of an atom and stretched it even across the entire breadth of the universe, if you move it on one side of the universe, it instantaneously would move on the other side without any delay. So it kind of suggests that what we understand as space maybe isn't quite what we think it is, because otherwise that wouldn't be possible. But, again, it defies our understanding because we have such a limited understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, people often talk about how difficult it is to get one of these beings even on camera, to get a clear shot of them. Mm-hmm. There has to be more to them if they're able to evade our technology as advanced as it is now. Mm-hmm. Apart from the fact that if you're suddenly confronted with one of our hairy friends, you get an adrenaline dump, your heart starts pounding out of your chest. Most people are often frozen in shock.
Yeah.
The last thing thinking of doing is whipping out your phone. Yeah. Even if you're an experienced researcher,
sure,
you still have physiological reactions to the fear reaction. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's really quite difficult to overcome, I think. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the fact that we can't get a good picture, no one seems to be able to capture one. Not that I want that to happen, because I'm really against going out and hunting one.
Sure.
There's more to this story.
Right.
Someone I interviewed the other day, and this was there's a valley called the Kapiti Valley in New South Wales, which is, if you look at the map of Australia, it's sort of on the eastern coast. Mm-hmm. This was just on the other side of the mountain range that runs down the eastern coast of Australia. On the west side of that mountain range, there's a huge valley, and it's on the 33rd parallel.
Ooh. And
somebody mentioned to me, yes, and I don't know, I haven't looked into this very much, but somebody said it's actually on the 33rd parallel, and that has some strange stuff going on.
Right.
I haven't looked into it very much yet, but I'm aware that there's weird stuff going on there. Yeah. Anyway, he's working in his house. His mailbox, this is out in the country, so his big property, mailbox is 200 metres away, and his wife and little daughter walk out to get the mail. And he's working in the kitchen, and he hears some heavy footsteps running. Stomp, 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 running towards the house, and sort of a strange swooshing noise, a bit like, he said, like she was wearing a raincoat that was swishing, rubbing together as she ran. He thought it was his wife running back to the house. And he looked up because she doesn't run very often and thought it was quite strange, looks out the window and sees that his wife is still up 200 metres away out at the mailbox. Something heavy ran, and he said he described it as a soundscape. It ran across his what should have been his line of view, but there was nothing there. Couldn't see anything. Heavy running footsteps and a strange sound. So much so that he was so alarmed that he had debated, do I go and get my gun out of the gun safe? Do I go and... He was worried for his wife and kids. So what's going on there? How can you be in the middle of the country? It's quiet. There's nothing. There are national parks all around. But here, heavy bipedal footsteps running, but nothing there.
Yeah, that's gotta be creepy, yeah?
Yeah. It really worried him. So much so that he said he reminded him to give his wife lessons in loading the rifle and being able to use a fire, because he was that worried about it. Yeah. Wow. So all sorts of strange stuff.
So it was on the 33rd parallel, you said, right?
Yeah, she said that.
Yes.
Wow.
That comes up a lot.
What do you? Yeah. Do you guys know anything about that? Because I've only just started kind of
dabbling into it.
Wikipediaing it.
Yeah.
Dabbling into it. I don't know much about it. What do you guys know about it?
I don't know a whole lot about it either, but it comes up often in stories and stuff that we cover, that things being on the 33rd parallel, there's something geophysical about that parallel, where along the 33rd parallel a lot of strange things are. And I believe, I don't know if I'm remembering right, but is it like the pyramids? Let me just see, the 33rd parallel. 33rd.
I remember one story said that like even things like JFK's assassination was on the 33rd parallel or something like that.
Is that possible? Okay, yeah, a map of the United States demonstrating 33rd parallel. I'm just looking, paranormal. Let's see. I'm still getting Wikipedia and stuff, but yeah, that comes up all the time. There's a paranormal forum here. Let's see what they're mentioning. Because once you said that, I was like, oh my God, there it is again. 33, well, they talk about 33 being the age of Jesus on his death. The most important degree of Freemasonry gives. And the vertebrae that make up the human spine, the human foot is 33, blah, blah, blah. The parallels 33 north and 33 south are another interesting topic. Scholars often refer to the circles of latitude as parallels because they are parallel to each other. That is, thanks for the lesson. Let's get to the meat. In the northern hemisphere, the parallel in question makes its way through U.S. cities, L.A., Phoenix, Dallas, and the town of Roswell. Of course, everybody knows about Roswell. Curiously, JFK was assassinated on parallel 33 in the city of Dallas, and some believe that this parallel was specifically chosen for the assassination. Oh, geez. Curiously, his brother Robert was also assassinated on the parallel 33, the Ambassador Hotel in L.A. President Franklin D. Roosevelt also died near the 33rd parallel. Well, that's maybe more happenstance, but Jesus Christ predicted his own death. The Phoenix lights were reported by thousands of people in the 33 parallel. A lot more mystery. I'm trying to read this as quickly as I can. I'm sorry, but the first nuclear explosion took place in Alamogordo, New Mexico on parallel 33. On the African continent, the town of Casablanca, a large square and hexagonal pyramid construction known is located on the 33rd parallel. Did you know that it was the 33rd U.S. president who targeted 2 Japanese cities with nuclear bombs? Both of these cities straddled the parallel 33. Okay. Jeez. Persian Gulf, did you know Baghdad is located 33 degrees and 33 something north? And the palace of Saddam Hussein was built exactly on this position. The city of Damascus, Syria, also corresponds to that parallel. Countries like Iran and Afghanistan are traversed by the parallel 33. Cape Town, South Africa, Sydney, and Australia also correspond to the mysteries. No pyramids. Okay. If we travel along the 33 parallel from the Middle East all the way to the Far East, we can actually find the fabulous White Pyramid, which is located about 60 miles southwest of Xi'an. The Bermuda Triangle also has a mysterious connection to the parallel 33. So there's a few mentions of it, but yeah, there seems to be something with the 33 parallel.
Yeah, Wes S., is this show prep?
Yeah. This is as good as my show prep gets, brother. I didn't know we were going to talk about 33rd parallel.
Wes says, this reminds me of when I had a presentation in front of the class and I never bothered to prepare, but I got up and gave that presentation.
Thanks, Wes. Well, it's the paranormal portal, not the parallel portal.
Parallel portal.
Another PP.
It's in another dimension.
Yep, along with my
in
prep.
A parallel universe.
Yeah, exactly. So there is something with geophysical lines, maybe. I mean, a lot of that could be just happenstance, but you do hear about the 33rd parallel a lot, and I think there's many other things corresponding to that as well that aren't listed in that little blurb that I read. But yeah, I mean, what about these mysterious invisible creatures? Do you think that could have been a Yowie? Was that the guy's take on it? Or do you think it was something maybe more spiritual or otherwise? Did he have an idea?
He didn't have an idea. He did think Yowie just because of the heavy bipedal footsteps, but very hard to say unless it's, as I mentioned to you before, in that case where the witness watched this Yowie fade out from one shoulder to the other, unless it's a Yowie that's in cloaked formation, cloaked state, and can still. But then I was thinking, if it's a Yowie in a cloaked state, would they still make the heavy footsteps?
Right.
Do they still make the noise if they're not? If their vibration is higher so that their mass isn't as dense, and this is my very rudimentary understanding of it.
Sure.
Would they make a sound or not?
Well, that's interesting because
Some people,
oftentimes we hear stories of these people going through the forest and being paralleled by footsteps. And no matter how much they look, they never see what's making it. But what if the ability to not be seen is not so much a shifting of actual mass, but is just the ability of I don't know how to explain this, but is it possible that the light is being bent somehow, but the mass is still there, just not visible? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And people have reported seeing, bushes and shrubs being parted as though something's moving through it, but not seeing what's actually moving the bushes. So, so clearly there's something there that's moving something out of the way, but it's got this ability to be invisible. I don't know.
Oh no.
Oh no. We don't know either, but it's the connection issues for the night. But again, as Sarah
she's
said,
got a great point too, because our spectrum of sight is actually pretty small when you consider all the light, all the radiation and visible spectrum there is.
All the wavelengths that are there, we only get a small percentage of them. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I think she's back. Are you here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, it must be the connection must not be great here today.
Oh, it's fine. We're just thrilled to have you here. So if we get a hiccup here along the way, that's still, like you said, it's still amazing that we're having a real-time conversation on the other side of the globe with each other. So that's amazing.
That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the same area, I got a report from another invisible being. This guy was camping in the same valley, but not near where the other guy was, kind of much further east, right on the edge of that valley. So he put his swag, which is I don't know if you guys have swags, but it's like a little mattress and mini tent all in one that you just fold out and sleep in. And he'd put that on a low stretcher bed, And he put it deliberately over a game trail because he wanted to see what would come through at night time.
Nice. Be a brave soul.
Yeah. Yeah. So, middle of the night, he wakes up and realizes that something is pushing him, like pushing his body. And it feels like it's trying to push him off his stretcher little bed and push him out of the way.
Oh.
And he said it felt like a pressure from about his hip to about his shoulder. It didn't feel like though there were hands or anything. It just felt like this force. And he started kind of pushing back and getting angry. And then suddenly this force starts crushing him and he couldn't breathe. And he thought, actually, it went on for so long, he thought he was going to die. He couldn't breathe. The friend he was camping with couldn't hear him. He did try and yell out, and he could even see. He could see down his tent, and there was nothing pushing in his swag. There was nothing there, but there was definitely a force that was so strong that it crushed all the breath out of him, and he thought he was going to die. And just at the last second, when he said, "Help, help," and it stopped.
Wow.
And he was okay. And he said what was weird was that instead of being, if something like that happened to you, you'd be getting up, you'd be standing up going, "What the happened there? What was that? I'm getting out of here. Let's get in the car and skedaddle. I'm not hanging around now." And he said it was really strange because he felt really calm afterwards. He unnaturally calm. He said for the next 48 hours he felt really peaceful and calm, and really strange experience. But that was in that same valley. So
they weren't.
I don't know. Right next. Sorry, go on.
They weren't foraging for mushrooms before this or anything, were they?
I did ask, but no. No, he has seen Aboriginal ancestor spirits before, this man. So quite a spiritual man.
Sure.
And had ghost things happen in his life too. So whether, actually an Aboriginal Australian contacted me and said that mainly perhaps it's either an invisible Yowie and you're on the game trail and it was hunting, or it's perhaps the spirit of an ancestor repeating an old hunting pattern. You know how ghosts are sometimes stuck in that energetic pattern where they repeat something over and over again.
Right.
So someone suggested maybe it was an Aboriginal spirit and he put his bed on the game trail in the way.
The interesting thing is that he offered resistance to it. So is that why he felt so crushed by it? Like if he had just relaxed with it, I assume it would have just continued to push him out of the way or whatever. But since he pushed force against it, it's like whatever that force was going to do that either way. It's just that by offering that resistance, he made that force so much more crushing. And that's very interesting. And I'm thinking the same thing. I'm like, well, could that be a Yowie? Could it have said, "Hey, this is our trail. You're on our trail, and you shouldn't be here," or any number of things. But wow! But he didn't feel hands. He just felt a uniform pressure along his body as he was being pushed. Wow. Yeah.
I made a point of asking that particular question, and he said he didn't notice.
Right.
Didn't notice hands.
That's very interesting because if it was, you would think he would feel the different pressure points from the uneven hands pushing against him, but he just felt a wall of continuous pressure. That's amazing.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's more disturbed by it now than he was at the time.
Well, that's the other takeaway then, that, okay, so a lot of times in Bigfoot encounters here in the States, people talk about they're in the forest and they're going along and suddenly things change. It's like, boom. And they feel this unnatural anxiety and fear and hate. And it's like this foreboding, and they know something is there watching them, and they feel absolutely uncomfortable. However, inversely, I've heard of people having sightings and seeing this really menacing looking figure emerge, but somehow feeling that calming, reaction. So, is there potentially that telepathic part of this phenomena where if they want you out of an area, they can invoke those feelings in you to get you the hell out? Like, nope, we don't want you here. And for any number of reasons. I mean, if there's a family group there, or vulnerable, juveniles or whatever, they may not be okay with people just traversing through. But on the other hand, it's like, oh, you saw me. Well, I don't want you to, poop your pants here. You're going to feel good about this. And they have that ability to project those emotions, it seems. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. We get those reports all the time. That feeling of suddenly dread, suddenly feeling you're in mortal danger, and you don't really know why, and you can't see anything around you that's causing that, but you suddenly feel like you're dizzy or sleepy, or feeling nauseous or dread, or all those bad things that make someone want to leave the area.
Right.
I was talking to someone the other day who mentioned, and I had heard this before, but some of the original Australians talk about the fact that they can make you sleepy, and they knock you out to then get you. So I've had the person I spoke to had that happen. He was out in the bush, and he knew that that was one of the supposed characteristics of these beings, and he was hearing the footsteps and tree branches breaking, and started feeling really concerned, but also noticed that he was feeling really sleepy. And thought, no, I'm getting out of here now. I do not want to lie down and wake up and have one of these beings standing over me. Rah. It wouldn't be a nice one to wake up, would it?
Is there an Aboriginal precedence for them being eating people? I mean, is that similar over there? Because there's certainly those reports in the First Nation histories that there were many tribes talking about how people were abducted and never to be seen again, and they believed that they'd eat the women and children, kind of thing. Was that also the case in Aboriginal lore?
Yes, from what I understand, that there are the same stories, that you don't stray too far from camp at night because the Yowies can get you. There are stories of them carrying off Original Australian women. They seem to have a fascination for children. So yeah, there are those stories. But considering the amount of reports that we get, and there aren't that many that involve actual violence. Most of them is aggressive behaviour that seems to be wanting to move people out of the area rather than actually wanting to kill them and eat them.
Sure.
So I'm not convinced that all Yowies and Sasquatch in your country, Bigfoot, that all they want to do is kill and eat humans.
Sure.
It might happen. It might have happened. I'm not saying it doesn't. But I generally get the feeling that they don't want to do that. They'd rather us just leave them alone, I think.
Yeah. And maybe it's a I don't know, everybody's got their boogeyman. And of course the boogeyman, or over here in the States, in the South, they call them wood boogers or boogers. That's the term that's commonly used for Bigfoot and Sasquatch. But every kid grew up. I mean, I heard stories about the boogeyman when I was a little kid, of being this creature in the darkness that will take you away or hurt you. So you want to be inside before it gets dark. And you got to wonder if they just take the existence of this and create a little bit of a scary story to make the kids stay in line. Like, we want you in here just to keep you safe, but you keep sneaking out. Well, did you know about the wood booger? And so maybe they use it, kind of like any number of other things we tell kids in order to, keep them in bed. You know what I mean? Yeah,
absolutely. So I think that's more the point. A lot of them have been, the classic old wives' tale to make kids not stray too far away. But look, that's not to say that people haven't been abducted and killed. Right. I think there's is it David Paulides over in your country who Polides,
Polides,
who does Polides, who seems to correlate disappearances in national parks with perhaps with Bigfoot activity.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I only know of 2 cases in the couple of hundred people that I've interviewed now, and all the other ones that I've read as well, where there's actually been physical contact, and that otherwise all of the stories are people getting a fright and running away, or there's a quick, brief roadside sighting, or lots of people seem to have experiences that aren't aggressive.
Well,
I don't know. I don't think they'd probably know that if they kill one of us, they're going to get the police, and they're going to get a huge group of humans coming to search and rescue crews, and that they'd probably know that it would be foolish. I think they're smart enough to understand that if they kill one of us disappears, that a lot more of us in their face.
Yep. I think you're absolutely right. I've thought that very thing. It's, I think the one thing they want is our absence. And so the best way to keep that is just to let people come through and wander on and, go on their way, or maybe steer them away from an area. But yeah, once people disappear, I mean, there's hundreds of people suddenly, or thousands of people in an area combing, what might very well be their home turf, and making life very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So, yeah. Have you heard of? I wanted to tell you about a case that I heard the other day. This is just this week. Have you had any reports of sideways blinking eyes?
Sideways blinking eyes. What does that mean? I'm trying to understand.
Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So our eyes blink like this. This is blinking like this, like a reptile.
No.
Well, I heard one the other day.
Oh my God! Do tell.
Second one we've got. Yeah. So it was actually a really quite a remarkable sighting. He was only 10 to 12 meters away.
Mm-hmm.
This being, it's in an area where we've got another couple of reports from the same area, Mandalong in New South Wales, and kind of central coast New South Wales.
Okay.
And just inland a little bit. Lots of national parks around there, lots of forest around there. But this guy comes across so he said somewhere between 7.5 and 8.5 feet tall.
Oh.
Big, dark being, massive being. He's riding a motorbike, a trail bike, and he comes across this being, stops his bike, takes his helmet off and turns the bike off. And he said that the look, he said there was actual expression on the face, and at first it was shock, and then it was kind of an angry look. He said, but while he's looking at it, its eyes blinked, but it blinked that way, not that way. And I said, so hang on, let me ask you a few more questions. I need to find out a bit more about this. So it seems like, and this is the second report we've had of sideways blinking eyes, that they have another membrane. They've got the normal lids like ours, but they've also got a membrane underneath that, and it's nictitating membrane, I think is the correct term. Okay. I had to look that up. I didn't know it beforehand. I had to Wikipedia it.
Sure.
I really sound knowledgeable, but not really. But apparently this is something that does exist in nature, is a nictitating membrane that keeps eyes moist and protected in certain environments. So this guy watched this being's eyes do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought that was fascinating.
That is fascinating. And as you were saying that, I was wondering, well, generally we hear stories of Bigfoot Yowies being a nocturnal species, but of course most of the sightings happen in daylight. So is what you're saying, I was thinking, well, is it an adjustment between day and night vision? I mean, because you would think if something's eyes were really tuned for night vision, I guess cats don't need stuff like that though, but it makes you wonder, is there some membrane that helps it to be more light sensitive or to gather more light during the nighttime versus a daytime mode? You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe. It could very well be it. Or considering the speeds that people report these beings can move at.
Yeah.
And I've had reports of them running alongside of cars driving at 100 kilometres an hour. I don't know how many miles that is, but fast.
Yeah,
The sort of speed that you travel on a freeway, on a major road.
right.
We've had quite a few reports of them keeping up with cars going at that speed. So if you're travelling that fast, maybe it makes sense that they have an extra protection over their eyes.
Right.
If we were travelling at that speed on a motorbike or a car, goggles or something to protect, to keep the wind out of your eyes.
Absolutely.
And bugs and all that.
Yeah.
So it makes a bit of sense.
It does
to me.
Yeah. It does. Yeah, that's a great point because, I mean, yeah, certainly squinting probably wouldn't pull it off, real well at that speed. So, No,
and they don't have sunglasses, or goggles, so it makes sense.
Right. No, I think that's a fair assessment, and I guess it's something I haven't heard of personally. Now I will be the first to say that throughout the course of my show, I probably hear 90% of the stories that are here are ghost stories. A lot of people calling in and emailing me and interviewing with me about spiritual issues and things. But I do get a few Bigfoot reports. But I do listen to other shows that of course, like yours and Cade's and Wes's and others that talk about Bigfoot. And I can't say that I've ever heard that before, but I think, and that's not me saying, no, that's a bunch of bunk. I just think it's fascinating because every time somebody sees something, and this is the reason I love talking to witnesses, is that everybody sees things a little bit differently, but, and I don't think that they're not correctly relating the events, but details one person sees, another person could miss completely. And so you end up getting a better, robust picture of the phenomena because somebody noticed something that maybe the other people didn't notice, and they share that thing. And it starts to flesh out an understanding of this enigma. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the details that this witness mentioned, and this is something I hadn't, apart from the sideways blinking, he mentioned that the hair around the eyes, it had dark skin, and it was kind of a blacky brown hair, but the hair around the eyes was tinged red, sort of like, and the way he described it was like you get, an older dog, like maybe a Maltese that has weepy eyes, and the fur around the eyes gets a reddish tinge to it.
Yeah.
Same with if a dog licking its paw too much, it gets a reddish tinge. So he described the tear tracks around the eyes as having a reddish tinge that the rest of the face didn't. This witness was so articulate and so good. He at describing in detail what he saw. We'll definitely make a video out of it. Actually, I'll let you know, and we'll send it to you when Australian Yowie researchers put together a video, because it's going to make a really a cracker of a story, I reckon. A really good one.
Yeah.
Do you have that expression in the United States? You probably don't know what I mean.
A cracker?
If it's a cracker, if it's a cracker, it's a really good one.
Yeah, in talking with Kate and talking with you and Gary and stuff, I get all these new expressions like too easy, mate. It's like too easy. Oh,
that's Gary. Too easy. I can hear Gary saying that in my mind.
Yeah, Kate says that one too, and it's like, oh yeah, contextually I can figure out what he's saying, but otherwise it's like what? But I think it's cool.
I have. Just so Cade knows, so he can see, I have his the Believe podcast, or the amazing podcast by Cade Moyer.
Fantastic. And speaking of Australia Yowie research, now you did join them on an expedition recently, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a few months ago now. It's back in. I did one in April, and then another one a couple of months after that, so April, May, June.
So how was the experience doing the research with the guys?
So cool. It was so much fun. I'd been talking to these guys for 2 years on the phone, and hadn't met them in person. So when I went up there in April, it was just so exciting. But going out to Springbrook National Park where they got that incredible thermal footage on with the thermal monoculars that we've all got now. Standing in the exact same spot where those two enormous 9-foot beings were standing was, I'm getting goosebumps even talking about it now. It was unnerving and amazing and awe-inspiring at the same time. It also made me think, how on earth could something move silently in this bush? I mean, there's so much leaf litter, there's sticks, there's all sorts of stuff on the forest floor. Buck, who was our cameraman who got that footage, Buck Buckingham, who's also our CGI illustrator, he didn't hear them come. They were only 20 metres away from him, and he didn't hear them arrive and he didn't hear them leave.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing. But to be out in the middle of the forest in the middle of the night, it's pitch black, you can't see, you can't see your hand in front of your face, and knowing that right in that spot there had been two of these beings right there was just such an amazing experience for me. It's quite scary though, like especially because the boys have their routines when they're on expedition, and maybe one person will be at base camp, but then everyone else goes off into the bush with their more monoculars, and sits in the dark, panning around, and it was. I'd be sitting even at camp by myself or further down the track just sitting by myself quietly, and all of a sudden you get this feeling like, shit, this is actually quite scary. Even though there's no activity, but just all of a sudden feeling I can't see any of the boys. Right. I'm by myself.
Right.
Anything could come and get me and nobody would know. Right. But then you just hold the camera up to your eye and, there's Dean. There's sure. Dean Harrison, only, he's just there. But, but because you can't see, and I think if I remember correctly, it was raining. It's semi-tropical rainforest there. So it was raining and we couldn't hear much either. So something could quite easily have snuck up and we wouldn't hear it. But yeah, it was a very special, for me, a really special experience being able to go out there and Gary and Buck and Dean were so generous with their knowledge, sort of explaining to me about the stick structures that we found, that they found, and the glyph structures and the sticks rammed into the ground and the X markers, and I learnt so much from them, and I can't wait to go again. I think we might be going on expedition. I'm going to try and get there in September. So
fantastic!
Fingers crossed.
That's really cool. Now
I
gotta say that the stick structure, the phenomena that they've been uncovering over there, I think is absolutely fascinating. But I'll tell you, to me, it's also incredibly unnerving because it seems to me that they're absolutely well aware of where you guys are and that you've been in certain places. And it's almost like, the eye of Ra being painted all over the place. Like, I'm watching you, because these sticks are just suddenly, they just walk through an area, come back to it a period of time later, and there's a big stick just jammed deep into the soil. And it's like, they know that wasn't there. And yet these things are just telling them, hey, we know where you are.
Exactly. Wow. Exactly. That night that Buck got the footage, they stayed overnight on their way out. There's following a trail. There were stick after stick after stick, different, varying in sizes, jammed into the ground that weren't there. Even they must have happened in 2 a.m. and 6 a.m.
Wow! And
it certainly wasn't the boys, and it wasn't. It wasn't a windy night. It wasn't natural causes either. Something came through and jammed those sticks into the ground. Maybe, and it wasn't them. So whatever it was, if it was our hairy friends, they did it silently for a start.
Right.
They didn't make any noise doing it, and somehow magically they all appear.
That's got to be a humbling experience, though, to have that happen and knowing that you were right in the vicinity and had no clue that they were there. I mean, oof. That's intense.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it is intelligent. That is intelligent.
Yeah,
there's intelligence in. And Gary has a great photo of something that he and Shannon found at Shannon's place. Shannon, part of our team as well, and he was there the night of the footage, but he also had an incredible sighting only a few weeks ago. But they found palm fronds, two small palm trees, bent together and woven together, so quite intricately woven together. Wow. No way that's going to happen naturally.
Right.
Yeah.
And who else? There's nothing else that has the ability. There's nothing else with opposable thumbs that has the ability to weave in such a complex manner palm fronds together.
Oh, I hadn't even heard of this, but that's fascinating. Wow.
Yeah. He was probably watching this. So Gary, send Brent those photos ASAP.
I'd love to see them because I mean it's the whole gifting thing as well is a real fascinating thing, and I think even the First Nations over here have protocols that they follow when they're going into an area. Some of the tribes will leave gifts. To say, hey, we're here, we're paying homage to you. We mean no harm as we pass through or are in this area. And it's fantastically, I think, profound when something is, something is missing but something has taken its place that didn't naturally occur. So that there's some kind of an agreement or some kind of acknowledgement at that rate that I think is incredibly profound.
Yeah. I had an Aboriginal Australian tell me that he used to go, as a child, he used to go fishing with his mother, and his mother would always leave the first few fish that she caught for the hairy man. That was just the way to do it. So you leave a gift and you leave an offering, and if you do that, they leave you alone. They don't come and get you, or they don't harass you. They don't chase you out of their area. Yeah, it happens. I mean, Gary's had some amazing experiences, particularly at that place, at Shannon's place. They've found tracks varying in footprints, varying in sizes. I've actually got one. I've got one here. Do you want me to show you?
Oh, absolutely, please.
Yeah.
Are you?
Oh, nice.
Hey.
Oh.
14-inch track. This is one of the smaller ones. And it has 6 toes.
6? Ooh, okay.
6 toes. So 1, 2. I'm going to do it like this so I can look at it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's one of the tracks that they found in this place where the palm fronds were as well. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That is
pretty cool. Look at this.
That's huge.
Oh, yeah. Look how wide it is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just so far out of the scale of human feet.
God, you hear what how big these features are, but seeing like a representation of it really is crazy and just mind-boggling to actually see what it would be, how big it would actually be. Wow.
Or Sheldon, Sarah's actually really small. No, just kidding. Oh no, I think she froze up. Oh no.
Oh, she froze up at the best part.
Oh no, I missed that. I just said Sarah's really
small.
Sarah.
That's a huge foot.
Sarah's amazing.
That's awesome.
Really, she's an idiot.
Oh, that's awesome. Though. I think that's incredibly cool. I just had a great talk with Dr. Meldrum, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, on our latest podcast episode, and we talked about a little bit about those. I don't remember if it was actually during the episode or before when I was talking to him before we were recording, but I brought up things about like these odd tracks and how do you account for them, like the extra toe or the three toes. And he said he'd never seen a three-toe track, although they're rumored to be out there. But he did imply that it's possible with the extra toe prints that maybe it's more than one that stepped there. And so the impression could actually be from a second one adding a toe because it wasn't quite in line or something, or something to that effect. And I thought, oh my God, I'd never thought of that. We often consider it's just 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot, but it could be a series of them sharing the print for whatever reason.
That would actually make sense.
Yeah.
I thought that was profound. I was like, ooh.
In the stories that we read, they usually are in groups. So yeah, that would make sense.
Right. Maybe they travel in the same way.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to talk to him. I'll have to reach out to him and see if he'll come on Yowie Central and have a chat, because
I'm sure he would. He's such a great guy. It was a great conversation, and he's such a personable person too. You'd think, a guy with his experience and his of course his pedigree is incredible, but he's just made all the time in the world for me to chat with him and have a great conversation. So it was a great show. But if you need help getting in touch with him, let me know. I'll help you.
Thank you. That would be amazing. I would love. We'll talk about that after the show. That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure.
But we get three-toed tracks here. Okay. I don't think our team has cast any, but I know that other people have found three-toed tracks and cast them. So.
So what do you make of those?
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any opinion on those anomalous
no.
ones? Yeah. Okay.
Jeff Meldrum would be the best person for that. I've got no idea. I mean, how do you get one being that physically looks the same?
Right.
That, when there are variations in color and size, but then has anatomically has different amount of fingers or toes.
Right.
I don't know how that works, unless it's just a birth defect. The Yowie that Dean used to interact with in the Blue Mountains, on Hazelbrook actually, which is near the Blue Mountains in New South Wales, they named Fatfoot because he would leave tracks that sort of looked like there was some kind of a deformity. Or an unusual track. So, and I actually know another researcher who's found multiple tracks of what seems to be the same being that has a deformity in one of the feet, not both feet, just one of them. So perhaps it's the result of some birth defect or an accident.
Yeah.
I mean, there are examples of human beings being born with extra fingers and toes.
Sure.
So,
Yep.
What's it called? Something dactylism.
Polydactylism.
That's the word. Yep. Polydactylism.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's
so,
interesting. A lot of times people attribute that with inbreeding because they say extra digits can arise in offspring in that manner. And I don't pretend to know. I mean, I'm not a geneticist, but maybe that's true. I can't imagine there again is another discussion all in itself, but how many are out there? Do you think that they run into that place where, we'd love to introduce you to someone else, but you're going to have to settle with your cousin Becky there, or something.
Oh no.
Your cousin Becky.
I don't know. I couldn't come up with
maybe maybe mates are hard to come by.
Yeah.
But potentially who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be a breeding population, but yes, cousin Becky might be the only possibility.
Yeah, it's just it's just an idea, but I don't know. I wonder oftentimes how many are out there, and I've heard different ballpark figures, and it's all wild speculation, of course, because we couldn't possibly know that. But it does make you wonder if there is a situation where inbreeding does happen, because that's the only breeding around. Maybe there's just not. There's areas where there's no other options. I don't know.
Yeah. And yeah, I can't pretend to know the answer to that. How many there are? Your guess is as good as mine. I really don't know. And if you add in the extra other dimension supernatural stuff in there as well. Yeah.
That's where
I don't know.
it gets real muddy, though, doesn't it? Because, I mean, we are dealing with a phenomena that we really don't understand but even just the physical characteristics and the anomalies in that are already profound, because you're looking at something that's 8, 9, 10 plus feet tall. It's, 1,100, 1,400, 1,500 pounds, maybe more. It's a giant, but they're quick, they're silent, they're incredibly strong, and all of that is just so far off the charts for us in our understanding. But then if you add in the other parts, and there's always the bleed through too. I guess the hard part to understand is are these spiritual phenomena as well as physical, like a multidimensional thing, or are we looking at two very different phenomena that, is it possible that something is just mimicking these Yowies and Bigfoot because, it's something else completely, like a shapeshifter or something to that effect? And I don't pretend to know, but I just get a headache sometimes trying to think of it all, because it's just, I want the answers to this. I want to know what this all means,
Yeah. And because, and I've talked to you about this, Brent, too, our childhoods where we were both bookworms and into books about, mysterious phenomena. And I've always, I was so disappointed when I reached an age at childhood where I was starting to be told, no, elves aren't real, and fairies aren't real, and trolls and ogres and goblins and all of those beings that I'd been reading about in all the books, and they don't really exist. Now I still read books about vampires and werewolves, and
sure,
basically all. If I've got time to read a fiction book, it'll have something to do with werewolves or something like that. So, or magic of some kind. So, I'm my thinking is potentially coloured by wishful thinking about what I really want to be there, but I'm finding, I can't deny the people who contact me, very honest, sincere, genuine people who have seen the weirdest thing out there. And not all of them are mistaken, and not all of them are lying. So what are you left with?
Right.
Magic out there. There are cryptid creatures out there. They're real. What the explanation is and how they are real, I mean, I don't know. I have heard that human beings, the fact that we exist is that an alien race took Sasquatch. Sasquatch is the original hominin inhabitant of this planet, and they've been around for 250 plus thousand years. This is what I've heard recently. I really like this idea. So an alien race took Sasquatch DNA and some of their own magical concoction, put it together and produced the human race, a Homo sapien sapien. So but they designed us in such a way that we have the ability to do all of these incredible things that Sasquatch can, but we've had some kind of a switch flicked off. We're not using all of our strands of DNA like we should be, not using our whole brain like we should be. So I kind of like that idea, that all of those things are possible. All of those abilities are possible. We have just been told that they're not possible and they don't exist, so we all believe that.
Right.
But in the meantime, there's all this stuff happening around us and all these people contacting us, you for your show and me for my show, and there's stuff going on out there, and I wish I had all the answers, but I don't.
I wish I did too.
But I love the idea that all this stuff's happening, though. It's cool.
Right. No, I'm with you absolutely. And one of the speakers, and someone Dean knew really, really well, and Dean's always promised me that he's going to talk to me about this on a show sometime. But it's Lloyd Pye, and he did one talk that I've really listened to from Lloyd Pye and it's still available on the internet on YouTube, I'm sure somewhere. But it's Everything You Know Is Wrong, and it's fascinating. I can't say that, he was right about everything or wrong, but I'll tell you, after I listened to his presentation, I was like, oh my God, that seems to make so much sense to me. And I really admired the guy. He was, unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but just a fascinating discussion. And here's the thing I was just thinking about. So what if we're the ones that actually enter this heightened state when we see them? And what if when they disappear is us moving out of that alert state back into a normal muted state? You know what I mean? Like maybe it's our perception that's changing and we're viewing these things and witnessing them, and then suddenly we're out of that phase and then they're gone. What if that was the case?
Maybe.
Right.
And is there the ability to, can we somehow connect with our own abilities to do the same things that they can without being frightened for our lives?
Oh,
because that's often the case. You're so frightened you want to get out of there. So it'd be really cool to be able to access these abilities, but without being terrified at the same time.
Right. Yeah, and it's just because it's so far out of our norm. I mean, our norm is pretty mundane, really, that we have a, Monday through Friday, we live for weekends and we got to pay our bills and, keep the lawn mowed or whatever. But in fact, there's this.
Boring is that.
Absolutely. And there's this fantastical world that's right around us, but we're just muted from it. We have this wall of fog around us, but maybe when people are having encounters is not the encounter coming to us. Maybe we've kind of tapped into something where we're coming to them and seeing them or whatever. And I'm just spitballing ideas, but it almost seems to me more, I don't know, just as plausible as them stepping in and out of dimensions. Maybe it's us that's becoming aware of their dimension and then not. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's all here, like you said. All of that stuff is here. We just don't know how to quite tap into it, but we get these savant moments where, boom, we're just there, and suddenly, the world's standing on its head, and then we're back to normal. I don't know.
It's not a bad.
Yeah.
It goes back to the thinning of the veil idea, and it's actually intimidating to me because it's what if this is all culminating to some point that's coming? What is that? And it's kind of intimidating for me to think about what this climax is going to be.
Right. Very interesting. And ladies and gentlemen in the chat, if you guys have a question, please feel free to put it in all capital letters so we can watch for it. But please feel free to ask your questions as well. If you have something you want to add to the conversation or something you want to ask our guest, Sarah, please, by all means, put it in the comments on YouTube. Just capitalize it or put at Paranormal Portal, and we'll be sure to plug your comment in as well. But great point, Sheldon. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I love these conversations because every time they bring something new out, and that was just mine. It's like, wait, maybe we're the one that changed. But I'd like to think that was the case, to be honest with you, Sarah, because I really agree with you. I think we're capable of so much more, but we're conditioned to not do so much more. And so we're stuck in this. Cade has a question. Have Sarah heard of any Quinkin encounters? That's from Quirkin Encounters? What the hell is
Quinkin. So Quinkin's the name that comes from Northern Australia, and I think it's Queensland, maybe Northern Territory as well. Mm-hmm. I haven't got any that I can pull up off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. So no. Asked me a really tricky question. No, I haven't got any Quinkin stories prepared. I haven't had any recently either. What I've been getting recently is Yowie stuff, but also very strange creatures.
Ooh,
so one that I heard recently is this a woman was camping with some friends. This was in central Queensland. And it was on ground that was potentially sacred Aboriginal ground. Mm-hmm. And she noticed all of a sudden like a change. It's nighttime. Sort of a change in energy someone else, there was another woman in the group who was feeling really frightened for some reason, and she couldn't quite work out why. So she's gone to lie down for the night, had realised that she needed her woolen hat, her beanie for the night. So she goes back to the car. On the way back, starts hearing a boom, sort of like someone was kicking a football, and she thought maybe the guys in the group were still awake and kicking a football around. Kind of strange to do in the middle of the night. But so she looks over to the fire and she can't see any football, but she sees this thing that starts moving towards her. And she said it looked like a big black tree, but alive. So this thing starts stomping, and she could feel the ground, she could hear it. It starts roaring and growing and elongating at the same time. So it starts getting long arms, and taller. It grows from maybe 6 foot to 15 foot. It starts getting taller and taller. But she said because it was growing as it was walking, it was all gangly, and it couldn't roar properly or walk properly because it was kind of growing at the same time. And she ended up fainting she fainted out of fear. She was so terrified. Don't blame her at all.
I don't either, yeah. Wow.
But so somebody, a couple of people wrote in after that show and said maybe it was a tree spirit. Because for her, it just looked like it was black and ashy and long and gangly. But the fact that it was growing as it was stomping towards her, far out.
Yeah, that's
clean underwear time. Yeah. You need to go and get some clean underwear after that one, for sure.
This kind of goes into a question that Maggie M10 in chat asked is, Sarah, how do you cope with the information you get? Does it scare you?
No, the reason why it doesn't too much is I haven't seen one of these beings yet. So I don't have that real life terror to fall back on. So for me, to a certain extent, a lot of these stories, I can sympathise and I can imagine what it would be like, but I haven't actually lived through it myself, so it doesn't frighten me that much. I'm dying to see one. I would love to see a Yowie, but as I remember, Brent, you saying this to me last time I was on the show, that wouldn't it be cool if we could see one, but not have it scary, like to have it a really nice, pleasant experience. So it's just standing over there. It's not doing anything. Sure. It's not roaring at you or stomping towards you or snarling at you,
Yeah.
So I guess I cope with it because I haven't lived it myself.
Sure.
When hopefully I do one day, if it does happen, I guess it might be a different story.
Right.
I also, because I'm talking to so many people and talking about so many strange things, before every interview, I visualize a protective layer of white light around me, around my energetic barrier, around myself. And I was advised to do this quite some time ago by someone who's a spiritual person, and they said make sure you're putting that protection around you so you're not attracting any of these entities that you talk about, that you're not getting a hitchhiker that's coming home with you. Right. And so far that's worked. So far that's
good.
That's awesome.
I don't see anything. I feel energy, but I don't see ghosts, and I don't see, to this point, I haven't seen any of that. So it's an intellectual level I'm coming from as opposed to a lived experience. So I guess I deal with it, like that.
Excellent. Sounds like a blessing at this point, considering all you could see.
Right.
Yeah.
So
the ghost stuff scares me more than ghost and demon stuff scares me more than Yowies do. Way more. I don't know why, but they do.
Sure. The fourth caller asks, wonder if she has come across any what is that?
Burunjor
stores. It's like an Aussie T-Rex. Yeah, BURRUNJOR stores.
Stories, maybe.
Maybe it's stories.
No, I've heard of that. It sounds like that sounds like an original Australian word, Burunjor, but
okay.
I'm not really sure. No, the short answer to that is no.
Right. Nope.
There is, yeah. Come to think of it, I've heard of. There's the legend, of course, of some dinosaur-like creature still living in the outback in Australia, and I think it even comes from an Aboriginal reference. Are you familiar with that or no?
I'm not even familiar with that reference. Okay. No, I mean there are lots of stories of the Marsupial Lions and
oh yeah, somebody asked about that actually.
Yeah,
yeah, that one came up. So.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that very much, but I was speaking to an original Australian elder not that long ago, and he mentioned that he had seen a marsupial lion face to face. I haven't had a chance to. We were just messaging, so I haven't had a chance to actually talk to him about it. But I would love to talk to him about it.
Is that the same thing as the thylacine?
But no, I have.
Is that a thylacine basically, or no?
Different
okay,
creature.
Different. Okay.
Different. I think different shaped face, different animal altogether. I think they existed. I think this is something that did exist. But I haven't. I don't really know that much about it.
Wow. Yeah.
Somebody I interviewed recently saw a thylacine, a Tasmanian tiger, yes. But on the mainland a few years ago.
That's awesome. I hope they're
so they might not.
There. Yeah. They might not be extinct. I know that Ken, well, of course, Dean had his run in and he shared on our show when I talked to him. But Ken,
I thought it was his dog.
Ken Rotman, one of our regular listeners, who's you haven't seen him lately, but he swears that he saw a thylacine as well. So I think they're still out there.
Yeah, I do too. I've heard quite a few people mention that they've seen them, and Dean saw one.
Yeah.
I've heard a handful of people who've seen them on the mainland. But how cool would that be if we haven't completely hunted them to extinction and that they're still around? There must be a breeding population if people are seeing some. So
yeah,
it's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's awesome because, I think that's such a heartbreaker when we, by our activity, have wiped some species off the face of the earth. I think that that's a tragedy. So to think that they're still out there and still surviving, to me is a great thing. But there's other apparently extinct animals that are making a rebound suddenly now too. So is that also a time, because of the time of that we're in and the raising vibration or whatever? I mean, there's flightless birds that were extinct that are suddenly come back, and they think it's because their flighted cousins came to the area that used to be occupied by the flightless ones, and they just kind of lost the ability to fly, and now they're the flightless ones. And
they evolved into them.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was like really cool. It's like this natural replacement. Like, oh, they're gone. Well, let's bring these guys over, and they can be the new residents. And so it's kind of fascinating that these supposedly extinct species are still reemerging. I think that's awesome. I don't know. It's kind of a peripheral thing. It doesn't really have a lot to do with what we're discussing, but the thylacine does, because of course that's become a cryptid because of the fact that, they were gone as far as everyone's concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, they don't look like anything else. They have a really distinctive gait, and they have a really distinctive tail, and it's hard to mistake them for anything else in the Australian bush. So when someone describes or says that they've seen a thylacine, it's unlikely to be mistaken for anything else.
Right.
There aren't any other marsupials or any other creature that looks like that. The closest thing would be, we get wild dogs and feral dogs and Black Panther sightings, but they don't look anything like a thylacine. There's nothing else that looks like a thylacine. So, yeah, be cool if they were out there.
Yeah, I think so too. And as these accounts coming in, I think Dean's cracks me up the most because he thought it was just this pesky dog or something.
Yeah. Yeah. He was like, "Get out of my shot! Get out of the way! Dude.
Get out of here! Get out of here!
Get out of my photo!"
Oh man! Oh,
He did a photo of it. Like, oh.
Yeah. Here's another question from Susie to anyone. She says, Brent, please ask Sarah about UFO reports during the Yowie sightings. Have you had any of those that correlate?
Yeah, we get. I mean, I was just talking to Yowie Dan, who's another researcher who has a YouTube channel called Australian Yowie. He's a serious researcher, and he was involved in that documentary track that came out, and they're about to release the sequel to that now, actually, Tracking the Law.
Oh, cool.
But he was in the Blue Mountains not that long ago, and Yowie activity. Well, they were in the Yowie area where there's been activity, but they spotted multiple UFOs in that area at the same time. And he also mentioned an orb, and I don't know if this is UFO related or spirit related, but the bush around they were at nighttime, and the bush around them suddenly exploded with light for like a flash, and then this ball that he said looked like it had flames in the middle and an orange kind of rim around it. Thought it was maybe ball lightning, but there wasn't any storms around, and that's all he could think about was either UFO related or can't be a storm because there's no storm. Was it a spirit? Was it a Yowie in that form? I mean, we do often get reports of, as the person who asked that question, we do get reports of people seeing Yowies and people seeing UFOs. In fact, I ask every person who reports to me a Yowie experience, I ask them if they've seen any UFOs or spirits, and so many of them say yes. Not necessarily exactly at the same time, but the people who are seeing Yowies have often seen UFOs as well. Whether that means that they are particularly open and sensitive to that, right. Or it's just a coincidence, I don't know. But it's quite common. It is quite common.
So
have you found that?
You know, I've heard the mentions. Again, I don't get a ton of Bigfoot reports, but I've certainly heard that. You know, people have made that correlation many times, and you know, here's the thing for me. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people that talk about this are subscribing to the possibility that, look, that's what they're riding in, and then they get dropped off and then they're here. But I think that from the behavior that I understand about the Bigfoot is that they're extraordinarily curious. And so they're in an area, well, if some strange lighted thing came through, they'd be like, what the hell's that? Let's check it out. And probably be a little more focused on that, and maybe can be sighted more easily because their attention's all on the weird lighted thing that's lit up in the sky. And, you know, I mean, are they interrelated? Well, no, not really. They're just kind of incidental to each other, but it wouldn't surprise me that it's just an expression of their curiosity, much like them looking in windows to see what we're watching on the magical box that has pictures. You know, they just seem to be so fascinated with technologies and certainly new things, and they seem to be really curious and stimulated by things that are different. So I just don't think, I don't know that anybody can draw that conclusion, like, well, that's how they're getting here, that's why they're so weird, and we just don't understand that they're from another planet. Well, I don't necessarily think so, but I can't know, but that's my take on it, I guess, at least from the outside looking in.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had, and you've had Jack Carey on your show, and I had him on my show not that long ago, and he's drawn a connection between Yowie, so Bigfoot and UFOs, and also potentially Dogman and UFOs, and that perhaps aliens are not only abducting human beings, but they're also abducting Bigfoot, and that potentially Dogman is some kind of weird hybrid experiment. And he's done a lot of research into that.
Yeah.
I don't pretend to have done, the research that he's done in that into that particular area. So I can't really comment with any expertise. But look, if human beings are a result of Sasquatch being abducted by aliens hundreds of thousands of years ago and experimented on, and then Sasquatch unfortunately then gets human beings dumped on the planet who then rape and pillage and destroy everything.
Yeah.
I can understand that they'd be pretty pissed with aliens in general. They'd be really annoyed. I can't see they'd be wanting anything to do with them at all.
Right. They're probably chucking rocks at them as they come by. Oh, you bastards.
Yeah.
Do have another question.
Completely sucked up our planet.
So Rachel gets it right. One of our moderators asked, has Sarah gotten any reports of unusually colored Yowies, like green hair or white hair?
White, yes, not green.
Okay.
We get the blue, not the blue, the brown and the black and the brown with the reddish tinge are really common. But we do get like the bright orange, like an orangutan.
Sure.
And we get white. We get a sandy color.
Like a blonde. Like a blonde color.
Yeah, like a blonde sandy color. We had one that had really long flowing blonde hair, and that was really buff as well. So we nicknamed him the Fabio Yowie because he was just the way the witness described him. He was really buff and kind of handsome and had long, flowing blonde hair. So
charming.
Yeah. He was carrying a cowbell, which was really weird too, because we don't use cowbells that much in Australia anymore. But he had a cowbell in his hand.
Oh wow!
Wow.
Well, you know why, Sarah? Because you always need more cowbell.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I always do. Who doesn't?
No,
I did hear a story the other day, and I haven't published this one yet because the witness still isn't sure if he wants to his voice on air. But I'm sure he won't mind if I mention this one little detail in that he believes that he came across a juvenile Yowie that was just sitting on a log, almost like it was waiting for mum and dad to come home with dinner or lunch. It was during broad daylight sighting.
Wow.
And he noticed that there was a little shelter made of sticks against a log with a cowhide draped over it. Black and white cowhide, very similar to not far down the road. There's a paddock with cows in them, and they're black and white. And this cowhide, which was draped over, it looked like a shelter. It was this same sort of same breed of cow as the ones nearby. So I thought that was I haven't heard that detail before. I thought that was a really interesting detail, that it appeared to be juvenile because it wasn't very big. It was maybe 5 foot tall or something like that, but not your 9-10 foot tall. And it didn't seem to react. It was looking at him. He'd just gone for a walk and happened to look up, and he was off trail, so he wasn't walking along any trails.
Sure.
I just happened to look up, and there's this little Yowie sitting on a log. And then it kept he said it was looking at me, and then it would sort of scan around the forest, and then it would look back at me and then keep scanning. And in hindsight, he's thought, this is a baby, this is a juvenile, and mum and dad have left baby there while they go hunting or something. And this little one's looking up, not afraid of him at all.
Wow.
And looking around the forest to maybe looking for mum or dad to know, well, who's this thing? What's this thing? It's a human. Yeah. But the cowhide was interesting. I hadn't heard that detail before.
Probably know where Mom and Dad were then. They were visiting the farm getting some more cow.
Yeah, true.
Yes.
They're doing some
Yes.
takeout. That's what's going on there. Oh, that's funny. Wow.
Stakeout. Put on shit.
Oh, stakeout. Nice. Well done. Well done. Well done. No, that's cool. That's interesting though that the hide was being used in that manner, like as a covering, because I mean everybody I think has heard of them making stick structures, but what if they do haul hides around with them? And what if they do cover those stick structures up with those hides, much like a rudimentary teepee, much like the First Nations did over here? You know?
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
and maybe somewhere because it was summertime, so maybe somewhere quite hot up in Queensland, so quite hot. It might have been shelter for Junior to get out of the hot sun while Mum and Dad are off hunting for dinner.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
I thought that was a really, really interesting detail.
See, there again, another interesting piece that I'd never heard of before, but it makes you wonder because, I've seen structures. I've seen these rudimentary structures in forests I've been in. And I investigated one near here that was more of a dome shape, but it was like the sapling was pulled over. Don and I went out and checked it out, and it was like this sapling was about a 4 to 6 inch sapling that was bent over in an arc. And then there were branches rudimentarily wove into it. And, but we see those like skeleton pieces, but it's hard to think, well, is that really a shelter? But what if they did have hides and that, they just keep bringing them with them to new areas when they're moving through? And I don't know. I mean, it's completely a guess, but that's a whole new nugget that I never even heard before. Wow.
Yeah, and it makes sense to me. If your food source includes hunting kangaroos or deer, that we have feral deer in Australia. They're not native, but we have a lot of feral deer. You wouldn't want Junior coming along like a toddler or like a little kid making noise, mucking around. You wouldn't be very successful with your hunting then. So it makes sense to me that they made a little shelter and said, right, you stay there, don't move,
Right.
or you'll be in trouble. Don't move. Go to bed with no dinner.
Right.
It makes sense to me that a little shelter would be constructed for a juvenile to wait it out
Right.
while Mom or Dad was hunting.
Right. Very good point. Now, we have a question about that. Ruger is asking, where is it now? It disappeared. I'm trying to find it. What did he? Oh, was the young one found in a structure? So was he in the structure when he was seen?
Sitting right next to it.
Sitting
so
right
the
next to
structure
it.
was sitting on a log and within a meter of this little structure.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, so kind of, he was extrapolating, I guess, and inferring then that this was a structure, because why would the cowhide be draped over it?
Right.
And it wasn't. It was a small. It was a small shelter. It wasn't a really big one, so it looked like it had been made to fit
Him.
the size of this being.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really powerful. I mean, I've never heard of that before, but it makes sense because, again, we see these weird stick structures, but they're not really shelter because like the rain would go right through it. But what if it had a covering that was removed when they moved on? So, wow. I'm really blown away by that. That's huge.
Yeah.
To me, it is.
I was too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The original Australians refer to the hairy man as people.
Sure.
As people. So
Yeah.
we're not talking about a primitive ape that
Right.
doesn't know, that doesn't kind of go, oh, we need a shelter for this, so I'm going to kill a cow, I'm going to skin it, I'm going to drape that skin over this other structure that I've made out of sticks so that then my child is out of the sun,
Right.
or out or out of sight. I don't know. It makes sense in the context if we're talking about beings that are people rather than animals.
Yep, and the Farm Seeds Network says, totally fits the narrative stories of them being another tribe of humans, which is exactly what you're talking about. Now, interestingly enough, the First Nation over here, the First Nations historically has always referred to them as another people, the hairy people or the forest people, which is interesting. But conversely, even other cultures have considered primates a people. Like the word orangutan in Indonesian, orang is people and utan is the forest. So basically, orangutan means forest people.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
In many countries I think in Europe, from what I understand, the hairy man is known as the wild man of the woods.
Sure.
In their individual languages, but it's always got man in it. I mean, wild man, not wild ape, not just another ape.
Or beast.
I think we're talking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Beast. Not an animal. We're not talking about an animal, which is why I feel so strongly that we shouldn't be out there hunting them, trying to shoot them, trying to catch them, trying to study them in a lab. I'll put one in his garage.
Give Wes for one for his garage.
Sorry, but we don't want one in the garage.
No, that's absolutely right.
We have a question from Wonder Woman in chat. Does she have a favorite, most horrific encounter?
Ooh.
There's so many.
Right.
So many. Look, the one that's look, there are a couple. The Hickey's Falls one, I think I actually might have told this on your show the last time I was on, so I don't know if I should tell that one again. I'll tell you another one that was just as scary.
Sure.
And if we've got time, I can tell you both. But so this is in Queensland. It's just outside of Brisbane, maybe 17, 20 kilometres outside of Brisbane, which is the capital city of Queensland on the east coast of Australia. Big major city. But there's national parks and all around that edge, the southwestern edge of the city. It was during the lockdowns during the pandemic a couple of years ago, and he is a active guy, likes going for walks, and he went to a place called Bellbird Grove, and there's no one around. He sort of snuck into this park area that it was supposed to be closed, but he went for a bushwalk, and he's walking up a creek bed, not on a trail. He'd come off the trail and was walking up a creek bed, and he heard rocks being clacked together and was thinking, what's that noise? And he kept hearing it, so he thought he'd keep going and see if he could find out what was making that noise. Comes around a bend, sees ahead of him what looked like a juvenile yowie mucking around in the water. Like the water was, there's a little bit of water in the creek. It was the middle of summer. And it was like it was playing with rocks, smashing them together and swinging its arms around, and, really cute. It's sort of like you can imagine a child playing in the water like that. And this little being suddenly notices him, turns around and makes a kissing, like a raspberry noise and formation with its mouth, and he could hear it make this noise. And then all of a sudden, Mama Bear or Papa Bear stands up.
No. Oof.
Yeah, 6-7 foot, massive being, hairy, stomps down into the creek bed next to Junior and roars at him.
Oh.
And he'd never heard of yowies before. He's a scientist, didn't know anything about these beings whatsoever. He turned around and sprinted for his life. He seriously thinking this monster is going to kill me. Had 2 mobile phones in his pocket. Didn't even occur to him to take his phone out. All he wanted to do was run for his life.
Right.
Can you imagine Can you imagine how scary that would be?
Oh,
And
no.
you're there on foot. And so the poor guy was actually so traumatized by that he has now, but for at least 6 months, he didn't tell his kids or his wife because he thought, he was so bewildered. He's a scientist, very rational, very logical, couldn't understand how the being that he saw even existed.
Right.
And I think he ended up going to see a doctor and getting some medication for a while. He doesn't need that now, but he did initially because he was so traumatized by that experience.
Wow.
So
that's incredible.
yeah,
It didn't pursue him
Yeah.
though. He didn't say that it pursued him.
no, and I doubt it would have if it had Junior there.
Sure. Right.
I would have imagined the most logical thing for a parent to do would be to stay near your child
Sure.
and just scare off any potential threat.
Can you imagine the instant shattering of a paradigm that just happened there? I mean, this guy went right from I'm in a world I know to, oh my God, I don't know any of this. My world just changed. Everything's different. I'm stupid. Oh,
Yeah, dropping F-bombs all the way. Going, yes.
F-bombs and fudge stripes all the way down that forest path.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes. Absolutely.
Wow.
And the other one was the Hickey's Falls one. It's one of our most watched videos at Australian Yowie Research. I can't remember. Last time I looked, there's like 80 or 90,000 views of the video that we made to accompany the interview that I did with this witness. But this was so it's a little waterfall off a main highway, and it's at the bottom of a big area of scrub called the Pilliga. And this area is notorious for weird happenings. There's UFO stories. There's lots of Yowie sightings. There's ghost stories. There's all sorts of things going on in this place, and lots of people report mysterious experiences. Mm-hmm. So this lady pulled off the main road, and there's a beautiful waterfall there with a rock pool at the bottom. I've been there. It's a beautiful place, quite eerie, but beautiful. And you have to kind of climb over rocks to from the car park to get to the waterfall and the rock pool. So this lady arrives with her 13-year-old daughter and a friend of the daughter and her 7-year-old son. Mm. The girls jump out of the car and run into the water. It's a hot day, and she can hear them squealing in the water and splashing around. And she said when she first got there, she noticed she suddenly started feeling uneasy, and she didn't know why. She then heard what sounded like a child crying, like a baby crying, and couldn't work out where it was coming from, but felt like there was a child in distress, and her maternal instincts are like, I've got to find the kid, what's going on here? And she couldn't see it anywhere. There was also in that car park a car that had all the doors flung open, but nobody in the car, like somebody had jumped out of the car and not bothered to close the doors and run off. It was really quite a eerie and mysterious feeling she had there. Mm-hmm. And so she makes her way to the water, and all of a sudden there's this massive, she heard heavy footsteps, trees breaking, and then a roar. And because it's there's a bit of a rock amphitheater there, so the sound seemed to echo and go on forever, and it's this massive, she said it was kind of like a bear, kind of like a lion, but way bigger, way louder. It wasn't either of those things, but that's the closest she could get to describing what it was. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden she's like, my God. And the girls start screaming, going, what is that? And so she just said, girls, run, get back to the car. She grabs her son, her 7-year-old son, and chucks him over her shoulder and runs for the car.
Oh my
and they
God.
pile into the car and they're all screaming, and then she can see this something pushing its way through trees from the top of the waterfall, coming down the path towards the car park and shoving trees over as it came down. And she's obviously freaking out, and this terrible smell enters the car, and she said it was so strong and so disgusting that it made her want to vomit, and she could almost not drive because she was feeling so sick, and cranks the car, goes to drive out of there, and veering all over the road, and the kids aren't in seatbelts, everyone's screaming. And this police officer just happened to pull in at the same time and waved her down and said, are you all right? What's going on? And she's like, don't go down there. There's something down there. Just something down there. Don't go down there. And she just kept driving. Drove a few kilometres and then stopped the car and got the kids into their seatbelts. And while she's doing that, the same police officer speeds by in his police car. And the kids say, "Mum, did you see his face? He was like terrified. Like his face was white, and he was looking terrified." And she said a little bit later on, like months later, something like Finding Bigfoot or one of those TV shows were on, and her son was watching, and he saw an image of a Bigfoot, and he said, "Mum, that's what I saw when you threw me over your shoulder." And I could see this, and it looked like that. And it had its mouth open. She said, but by that stage, the roar had stopped, but it still had its mouth open, which was, whether it was emitting infrasound or something, I don't know. But sure. She contacted the police afterwards, the local police station, to find out, to report something, like there needs to be a sign there or something that this was really dangerous. Yeah. This is what she was feeling. And she found out. She asked after that police officer, and she found out that he'd come back to the police station shaken, and he actually left the police force.
Oh,
not long after that.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So, and she, because of her career, and I can't mention what sort of work she does because it's confidential, but she found out a bit more information about this police officer and that he'd left the force, and hasn't been heard of since. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, that's probably up there with one of the scariest. The way she told it, and the site itself, and the fact that her children were there, and she thought something was going to come and eat her babies.
Oh my God.
And that there. So the baby crying that she couldn't work out where it was coming from, and the stench and the dread, and it had all the typical
hallmarks.
Yowie hallmarks.
Oof.
But scary.
Very scary. We got a question in the chat. It says, Sarah, what could be their menu in the drier desert, like areas of the inland bush?
Well, you won't find, we don't get too many reports from desert areas.
Okay.
They're always from areas where there is some kind of scrub or forest. But you get kangaroos and wallabies pretty much all over the country. You get emus, which are giant flightless birds.
Oh.
You get dingoes, which are wild dogs.
Sure.
You also we've got a huge feral dog population and feral cat population here.
Oh.
So there are those animals around. There's a huge feral deer population. There are feral camels. We've got one of the largest camel populations in the world.
Oh, wow.
Running around the interior of the country. So there's plenty to munch on in in most parts of the country.
Just gotta eat off the hoof there for a little bit, but yeah.
When you say feral, do you mean like aggressive?
No, feral means wild.
Okay, just confirming. All right.
Yeah.
Well, it means imported, so not endemic, not natural to that area. So cats are not native to Australian animals, and neither are dogs. So when we say feral cats or feral dogs, we have feral rabbits. Rabbits are not native to Australia.
So-
Animals that are not native.
Invasive, yeah, species, yeah.
Invasive.
Right.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, that's been fascinating. What is the time? My God, it's already almost 9. How did
Yeah.
that happen, Sarah? How did that happen?
I don't know. We're having such a good time.
Good conversation. That's what.
It's brilliant, and it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and thank you so very much for making this time to come on the show. It's always a great opportunity to share ideas and stories and to compare the phenomena between our two very different locations, but still all of those similarities are there, and that's something I'll never quite understand, because I mean, if you think about it, that was our question on what is it, Sheldon? Discord.
Yep.
And we basically asked, we do a question of the week or questions of the week for every live show, and the question this week was what, Sheldon?
The question was, the Yowie is the name given to the Australian Bigfoot. Do you believe Yowie and Sasquatch in other areas of the world are related, or are they their own separate being?
Mm-hmm. And somebody responded.
Yeah, Fourth Color said, I bet the Yowie and the Yeti are distant cousins. They could have came from the same branch long time ago, or could have evolved separately from different hominid lines. I think it's more likely the latter, but it kind of reminds me of how people as a whole look different across the world. Could be similar thing with Bigfoot. I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that seems. I mean, what I was marveling at, and what I always marvel at, is the consistencies between the Yowie and the Bigfoot Sasquatch phenomena. Like there's the clacking, the rocks, the tree knocking, the breaking of the roars. There's so many things, including the way they behave. And it just fascinates me that they both, even though they're developing in their own line, if they did have a common ancestor, they still seem to have maintained a behavioral similarity, even though they're so far removed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I think they're very similar to human beings. I mean, we depending on where we're from, we can look very different.
Right.
Someone from Africa doesn't look like me, and someone from Japan doesn't look like me. So I think it's probably the same case with the Yowies. I think they're all related. All those hairy men, all the hairy men, the hairy men, all the Yowies around the world, whatever names they're given, I think we're all talking about the same kind of being.
Sure. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. But thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Yes,
sharing
thank you.
ideas.
It's been a delight.
Having me.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to be here. I always love connecting with you, Brent, and it was lovely to meet you, Sheldon.
You as well.
Thank
you.
Absolutely. And so hang on the line on Skype here, and we'll talk a little after the show. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up our journey here tonight. Thank you all for being here and being a part of the journey. I'm sorry if we missed any questions in the chat. I know there were some that flew by. I grabbed the ones that I could see. So if we missed you, I do apologize. There's just only so many opportunities for me to see what the hell's going on. But I didn't ignore anybody on purpose. All your questions were wonderful. Thank you all for participating. Thank you all to the new visitors that are here joining us. And if you like what you saw, please get subscribed. And remember, the Paranormal Portal is also a podcast, as well as Sarah's Yowie Central. We're out there on the same platform, so just search for the Paranormal Portal and you'll find us there. So, but anyway, that's going to conclude our journey. Thank you all. Just remember, we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice, take care of each other, help each other out. Find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
That was Sheldon.
Good night.
That was Sarah. And now for me. Good night.